Welcome everyone to the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor, and this is yet another of this series of movie reviews I've done, sort of blending both the cinematic and my love of music, obviously, being a guy in a band. Today we are going to look at The Dirt, which is, of course, is the biopic of Motley Crue, one of my all-time favorite bands. It was released on Netflix March 22nd, 2019. And, this is one of those movies that had been in the works for so long. The Motley Crue put out their autobiography, The Dirt, back in, I want to say 99 or 2000. They co-wrote that with a guy named Neil Strauss, who, I remember Neil Strauss, because I picked up one of those books when I was a single guy about, the whole guide to, picking up chicks, which was what Neil Strauss, he was into the whole, pickup community. Needless to say, it never really worked out for me too well, but that's beside the point. But that was my experience with Neil Strauss. But apparently he co-authored the Dirt, the book. Yeah, I know guys in bands that I was with, since I was in college, they would all tell me about the Dirt. It's like, man, you got to read the Dirt. And they weren't even Motley Crue fans, but they just thought it was such an interesting book. I had heard about them wanting to make a movie about this for a long time. It is one of those projects that was just in sort of development hell for years and years and years. I remember there were talks about who would play the band. People, they put around big names like Ashton Kutcher or Paul Walker or whoever it was to play the guys in the band. And I think it wasn't until Netflix came around and picked it up that they got the rights for it. But before we get too deep into the history of the production, I do want to bring on my panel. Both of these guys have been on the show before. One of my more recent guests is a buddy of mine who I met through my buddy's wrestling company, Generation Championship Wrestling. He's a professional wrestler himself, as well as a graphic designer. He is the host of Motley Metal, which is a internet radio show on Spreaker and Sound Machine FM. And as I mentioned, he is a professional wrestler as well. Very Motley Crue inspired professional wrestler. Please welcome my good friend Kris Rex.
How you doing, Jack?
All right. And of course, it wouldn't be a music-related podcast without having this guy on. He's been on my show probably about 2 or 3 times now. I think it's safe to say friend of the show. I think he's officially earned that title. But this is a guy. He's been a long-time musician. He's the former bass player for the bands Black Tide and Falling in Reverse. He now resides outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Please welcome Zakk Sandler.
Hey yo.
It's fun. It's funny when I got the idea to do The Dirt, and I know Zakk, you were one of the guys who showed interest in it. I thought oh man, there's a guy I know who probably has a few road stories of his own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Heavily inspired by the tales of Motley Crue.
I will bet, no doubt. But guys, obviously we're all big Motley Crue fans. That's kind of the big connection how we got to this. How we got to wanting to dive deep into this movie. I know for me, and I'm showing my age a little bit, but I was around 13 or 14 when their Behind the Music special came out on VH1 back in the late 90s. So I would have been too young for to have experienced a lot of their stuff when it was really happening, because I was just born in 1984. But when I saw the Behind the Music, I was immediately experienced this whole other generation of rock music that I'd kind of been aware of, but not really. And just, it blew my mind. And from there, people talk about glam metal bands and quote unquote hair bands, but really I think it was Motley Crue and Def Leppard more than anyone else who really, I think, kind of set the stage of what that era was really all about. And I've been in love with their music ever since. I feel as much attention as they get for being just out of control party animals, which they were, I feel not enough credit is given to them as musicians and songwriters, because I really love their music, and that's really why I'm a fan more than anything else. Kris, let's start with you. What was sort of your first, what made you a Motley Crue fan initially?
Well, like I really wasn't around for let's say the golden era of Motley Crue. I was born in 1990, so I completely missed that era. But I always heard their hits growing up. I think everybody has on the radio. They're all over the radio, any classic rock station. And I always knew about the Dr. Feelgood album, but I really couldn't say I was a fan. And then I heard 6 a.m. Nikki Sixx's band 6 a.m.'s Life is Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I just love that song. I used to play darts, and that was always a song that me and my brother and our friends would play to. So I just wound up picking up, I was on my phone, and I was on Facebook, and I seen this advertisement for The Dirt, a biopic on Motley Crue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, everyone knows their history. They're the most infamous rock band. And I was like, I want to see this. So I watched the movie, and I was really inspired by the movie. There was just something about Nikki Sixx in general, and his story that really reached out to me more than anything. And I kind of seen myself, a lot of myself in Nikki Sixx, and I've always been, I guess, attracted to the rock star lifestyle, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's me. I've always been attracted to that. So after seeing this movie, it got me thinking, as a pro wrestler, I was like, okay, as a pro wrestler, you always have to find a way to evolve and change yourself, you know? If you're the same person, if you're the same character, it becomes stale. Yeah. Undertaker's done it. All the legends have done it. So like I said, what if I kind of took this whole Motley Crue image and turned it into a character? So that's kind of where I was going to go for it. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and that threw things away. And a good friend of mine, had started his own little radio station, and he was doing metal stuff. And he said he was starting to slow down. And I was like, I want to do a show on glam metal, strictly glam metal songs. And pretty much it was inspired from The Dirt. And hearing Motley Crue, I became a Motley Crue fan. I downloaded all their albums, listened to all their albums from top to bottom.
Wow.
And then I decided to read the Heroin Diaries, Nikki Sixx's book. And it's pretty much literally a diary of the years he was on heroin. Yeah. And it was an intense story. Again, it just drew me into Nikki Sixx so much more to understand this guy's life. And you can call him a junkie at that time. You can say what you want, but when you start to understand a person, you're like, you understand why they're in these situations that they're in. So it really just spoke to me, and that's really how I became a huge fan of Motley Crue now and started my own podcast about it.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's cool. So, I mean, this movie really was like kind of your way in to really like deep dive into the band. So that's interesting to hear about. That's cool. Zakk, I mean, obviously you're a guy who really lived the life. I mean, God, how old were you when Black Tide got signed, by the way? Like 14 or something?
I was 17.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and my singer was 14.
Right.
And I'm 32 now.
They called you Pops, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was the old guy in the band.
You were you're the grizzled veteran.
Yeah. It's kind of weird even. Like, I always joked, I was like, oh, like, if my whole career goes down the tank when I'm 30, it's cool. I can still start living a life then. And, like, almost like to the T, like, you know, career didn't go down a tank. I made a conscious choice. But it is kind of funny that's how it all played out. Motley Crue for me, I'm trying to think of like when I first discovered them, or not when I first, but how I discovered them. Mm-hmm. And I think it was probably around the late 90s, because that's when, probably like 99, 2000 is when like I was like I was getting like really into playing guitar, and I was like discovering music that wasn't just top 40 or wasn't just like Prince or like, you know, the classics essentially. And I feel if I remember correctly, I was like watching some late night like VH1, how they would just like show music videos, and I remember they'd pop up video at the time. Yeah. And I think they were doing one like on hair metal, which had me stoked because like they showed like, oh, they were gonna do like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi, and I was like, oh, I like those bands. And like I saw Motley Crue, and I think they were doing Shout at the Devil. And I was just I had a
feeling you were going to say that.
And I just remember, like, watching it just being like, yo, like, these dudes dress cool as hell. Like, they look me. Although, in hindsight, I'm like, that was so not cool for dressing. Like, I was like, there's way too much leather going on. But like, I get it. Like, it was a whole 80s thing. And that kind of spiraled out of control a little bit for me because, I'm really good at obsessing over things and finding myself knee deep in every band, and like I want to know the history, I want to know who was born where and how they write these songs and blah 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 blah. And I think like there were two things that attracted me to them. Like when I looked at like what they looked like in the 80s and what they looked like in the late 90s, I went, yo, this is how like cool you can continue to be.
Yeah.
And like just the basic knowledge I could get from early dial-up internet on Motley Crue was like okay, Tommy Lee's the badass who's only like been married to models. Nikki Sixx was the druggie who figured it out later in life. Vince Neil killed a guy, and Mick Mars is like the most amazing guitarist that nobody ever talks about. And that was how I went, okay, Motley Crue's sick. And then of course like
that's basically the Reader's Digest version of it.
Yeah. And then like
Vince killed the guy.
Yeah. But then like I got into like the just like into their music and stuff, and like seeing their stage show, and like I remember going to see them. Was the very first show of their reunion tour was like in Fort Lauderdale, and at the time, my first Black Tide, we were being courted by the same management company, so like they hooked us up with tickets.
Now was this like 05, like the Carnival of Sins tour?
Yeah.
I remember seeing that show when it came to Tampa when I was living out there.
Yeah, which was probably like the next day.
Yeah, and I just remember like thinking like this is one of the greatest rock shows I've ever seen in my life. Like
yeah,
the production, the songs, they were just on point. It was incredible.
It was, and it was everything that like I kind of wanted. Then as I got into the music industry more and learned more about like they're one of the bands that have like openly talked about using backing tracks because they're like it sounds better and like and kind of just like. But, like, I was like, well, at least they acknowledge it, Like, yeah. I can't, like, if somebody's like, yeah, of course we do. There's, 4 of us with microphones, and we need to sound like 20 of us singing gang vocals. Like, we do this every night. Don't expect the harmonies to be on point. I was like, yeah, at least you guys are being honest. Like, you're older, you know where you're going. So, like, no, I had no qualms with it because the honesty was there, which I think is also the thing that always, this is what I love about the band and what I hate about the band. Is they've always been the band that presents themselves as being an honest rock and roll band.
Mm-hmm.
But that'll also play into how I actually feel about the Dirt book and the movie.
Okay.
Because I think it's not. I think there's a lot of over embellishment of some very simple things.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like I'd say and knowing like the kind of writer that Neil Strauss is, and like how do we maintain our bad boy image, I'm wondering about how much of the Dirt story is actually true.
You also got to wonder how much do they actually remember, like really,
and whether what they remember is actually being remembered. Like.
And was it that, or were like they in the room and somebody did that? And they're like, listen, yeah, wasn't that Nikki that did that? And they're like, yeah, it was, but maybe it was just literally some random dude with them.
Yeah. Like I can tell you, like there's been times where I've been on shit, and I'll sit there and I'll try to remember, and I'll be like, oh, that happened, and someone's like, dude, what are you talking about? That was a completely different night. I'm like, no, that was that night. That happened that.
Right.
Who knows what the truth is,
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I mean, I get it. Like, it's their story. They have the right to tell their story the way that they want to.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of stuff, just like in the book alone, that I was like, okay. Like, if that's how you want to remember it, that's how you guys are agreeing that it happened, sure. It's your story to tell. Who am I to say anything else? But, I know enough through, like, my experiences and, like, just general knowledge of being on the road, and like even though I get the 80s were wild, I'm like no, couldn't happen that way. That's not how the world works. No way.
Yeah, no, that's probably true. I mean, one of the big takeaways for me from watching this movie, and I haven't read the book. I haven't actually gotten a chance to read the book. I want to because I both want to, but I'm also scared to because I have no idea what the hell to expect to see in that.
Yeah.
But like I also look back, I'm like, man, my life has really been boring compared to these guys. like I mean, I don't drink or smoke or do any of that stuff, and I mean, I've been in bands. Certainly haven't had like chicks throw themselves at me, not too often. So it's I'm like, man, what am I doing with my life? I don't know.
Become a rock star.
Yeah. I think their story and like how they've maintained it and told it, like with just like the women and the partying and all that, I think that they've done a really good job at going like, this is what you can get, when like the reality is like, yeah, you can, but you know, there's only so many bands that ever really talk about those stories, you know what I mean? Like Metallica kinda touched on it, but like they were like, yeah, there was a period there, and you're like, oh, okay. So for a moment, like in the 90s, like you guys did kind of do that thing, but it wasn't to that extent, or like,
Sure.
you know, like
it was controlled, you know, like
yeah, like Def Leppard would tell their stories about it, but like it was never quite as far as like nobody has stories like Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Nobody does, and that's part of where I'm like, so did all that really happen?
Right, yeah, no, you have a right to be skeptical. I mean, you know, Chris, I'm sure, like, you know, as they say in the wrestling business, are these guys working me? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's cool. So I want to go through kind of the production things on this. So I know in 2006, that's when the film rights were bought by Paramount Pictures and MTV Films.
Mm-hmm.
And they were originally going to have a guy named Larry Charles to direct the film. But I guess production stalled in around 2008 because I guess there were some legal issues with MTV and MTV Films. I guess MTV was trying to like branch out and to make more movies and stuff. I don't even know if MTV Films is still a thing.
I mean, they made the Beavis and Butthead movie.
It's true. They did America, and I think there was that movie Joe's Apartment with the roaches.
Oh yeah, Joe's
that was an
actually,
MTV film.
Yeah, which actually is like a weird underground phenomenal film.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody
I loved
says.
it growing up.
Yeah,
It's deep cuts there.
Yeah, Jerry.
Listen, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Joe's Apartment was every apartment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, in 2015, I guess Focus Features picked up the rights to the film. Then there was, and then I think in 2017 was when Netflix bought the rights to it.
Right.
So they were trying to look at, you know, different casting decisions. I thought the movie was really well cast. Like all the four guys, everything was spot on. And you know, we'll definitely go through the cast list. But I mean, who knew Machine Gun Kelly was such a good actor?
I honestly didn't even know he was in the film. When I seen it, I'm looking at this guy's face that's playing Tommy Lee, and I'm like, why does his face look so familiar to me? Now, I really wasn't a fan of MGK. I didn't really listen to his music, especially after you tried to diss Eminem. I was just like, okay, this guy, so he's just done. Then I watched the film, and I'm like, you know what? He played fucking Tommy Lee pretty well. Like, he was pretty spot on. I kind of became a fan of him after that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zakk.
I was gonna say, like, I think the role that he was directed to play in that movie was really well done. I don't know, like, there's still something about me that's like, I don't feel like that was a good representation of Tommy Lee. Like, it always kind of made him seem like a little more aloof than he really is. Made him seem like he was a little more kiddish than the rest of the band. Although, like, that really, you've never really seen that. Like, you saw, like, he was like, I don't ever have to grow up kind of thing. But I think there was, I get he was playing the role that he was directed to play. And I think a lot of those kind of decisions, I'm going to make that all fall on Jeff Tremaine for
Jeff
attempting.
Tremaine. Zakk, have you met any of the guys from Motley over the years?
I met Nikki Sixx in Japan. We were on we were doing Loud Park Festival in 2008.
Oh, right on.
And the day that was just a whirlwind. That was the same day I got to like meet Duff McKagan and like that was amazing. Yeah, like it was an amazing day.
It's a hell of a day.
Yeah, but like literally like in the hallway like ran into Nikki Sixx, and like I was a huge Motley Crue fan. I was like, oh my god, I have to go say hi to him.
Nice.
So like that was literally it. I went and said hi, introduced myself. He was just like, oh cool, that's rad, blah blah blah. Went on his way, and then I saw how the Motley Crue production operates backstage, and I literally watched. We're talking, this was in an indoor arena. I watched a car pull up to the stage, 3 different cars for 4 dudes to get out of their car and go straight onto the stage.
Yeah.
That's some rock star bullshit.
Yeah. That's having some clout.
Yeah,
That's
their
the Motley
shows.
Crue shit.
Yeah, but like that was the thing. Motley Crue's the only band that's gonna do that like in
So
the
Duff was there. Was Velvet Revolver playing that show?
No, it was his band Loaded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was going on like right before us. So I also had this weird like thing where I was like, one of my heroes was going on right before me, and then the whole time that he was talking, I kept thinking about how he could probably see the Velvet Revolver tattoo on my arm. And this is a little weird, but like I hope he doesn't really watch the show, because then he's gonna realize I'm ripping him off really hardcore. Him and Nick Six. Like I was like, those are the two dudes I ripped off.
Good choices. Both great bass players. Yeah, they're awesome. So yeah, Jeff Tremaine was the director. I don't know what else. What else?
Jackass.
Oh, okay, Jackass. So
he's the Jackass guy.
So that tracks.
we're on a great track here.
And I think that's like the only real. I mean, I know he's like done other stuff like in that world, but I don't think he'd ever really directed like a movie before, right?
I don't know. I mean, he's done the Jackass movies, but he's done like Bad Grandpa. So all right, so like with Knoxville, that's like kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, but I mean that obviously that's an inspired choice to direct this movie.
Right.
But I was even going to say about MGK and talk about. I mean. That kind of makes sense that he would play Tommy of all people, because like Tommy's such a big hip hop fan. It makes sense he would want MGK to play him, and from what I hear, I mean I don't know a lot about MGK's music, but I know that like he's recently been transitioning, doing more of like pop punk stuff, like he plays guitar now and some other stuff. So I mean good for him. He's branching out.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really my jam, but like, whatever. Good on him for trying stuff.
Let's see. Who else was in this that was any good? So yeah, it was Douglas Booth played Nicky Six.
Yeah.
Who's the dude that played Vince Neil?
He's an Australian actor. His name is Daniel Weber. He was in The Punisher, the Netflix Punisher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like. So he was pretty good. And then you had Ramsey Bolton, Iwan Rehan.
Yeah, playing Mick Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I enjoyed it. I just found it really funny at Pete Davidson playing Tom Zutaut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny. Like I don't know what this guy looks like in real life, but I hope that's not like he was this quirky, weird, teenage-looking dude.
I guess Pete and MGK are buddies, so that's maybe that's how he got that gig. I don't know.
Yeah, like I remember seeing like an interview with Tom Zutaut, and I was like, that dude looks nothing like him. I was like, and such a poor representation. Like I get it, he's supposed to play like the label stiff, but I'm like you kind of played it like how you would think it is, not how it actually is.
They made him look like this weird. He looked like a teenager, like a teenage kid fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
He goes up to the club eating like, "Hey, I'm from Left to Record."
Yeah, but like even like just like the story on like how he signed them, like compared to real life, was just way off.
Yeah, I heard that was like completely far from the truth.
Yeah. Or do we want to dive into the actual like movie a little bit, or?
Yeah, I'm about ready. I mean, I think we've kind of gone over most of it, and it's. But before I say we do dive into it, it was cool like how involved the band was with this. I know they recorded some songs for it. They recorded the song
3 new songs,
and had MGK do like a guest vocal on it, and they did this cover of
Like a Virgin,
and it was interesting. It wasn't
not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I mean it's. I don't necessarily mind them covering a song like that, but
I read
the arrangement they did was a little off.
In an interview, I believe Nicky Six had said that they did it kind of as an insight, like a Virgin, which is far from what Motley Crue's image is. Right. So it's kind of like they did it kind of like a play on that.
Sure, like very tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
So that makes sense, and I think there was this one Yeah, well, we can get into it later, but there was this one cover version of Livewire during the Nikki heroin
Yes,
scene.
by Megan Kabir. Oh, I love that version.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's in one of the most intense scenes in the movie for me.
For sure, for sure. So, all right. So with that in mind, however you're following this, I mean, I guess it's on Netflix right now. I ended up getting like a bootleg DVD version of it on eBay, just so I could have it, just because why not?
Might not stay on Netflix forever. Need that DVD backup.
Exactly, man. I'm old school like that. I want to own my stuff forever. But yeah. So if you're following along with the dirt, this isn't really a strict watch along, but we're gonna kind of go through it beat by beat. So if you want to follow it along, we're gonna go through it now. Spoilers. 3, 2, 1, and then start. All right. So we open up with a montage of some real footage from the 1980s with Nikki Sixx doing the voiceover. It was weird hearing him describe it as the worst fucking decade of all time, with preppies, keyboards, stupid haircuts, jazzercise, and just say no. Which I thought was an interesting take, because like when I think the 80s, I think Motley Crue and Def Leppard.
Right.
But I mean, I could see how that might have looked to him. I thought it was interesting how they say, what do you do when you're born in the wrong time? You make it yours. And that's exactly what we did on the Sunset Strip. I'm like, that's a good quote.
That quote kind of like did it. Like I said, I've seen this movie 25 times. I'm not lying. Like 25 is what I'm up to right now. That line, that opening line, what do you do when you're born in the wrong era? You make it your time. Like, if you're not inspired by that,
all right, but like let's be real for a second. Was Motley Crue born in the wrong era? Like, had they been 10 years earlier, it never would have worked. Maybe if like they came along now, maybe. But trust me, my first band, our first record sounds like a Motley Crue record. It doesn't work in 2008. Like, I can promise you that. Like, so I do love.
Damn well should.
Yeah, right. But like, I do love that. That is how they're like, you make it your own. I'm like, well, you guys really couldn't have existed in a different era.
No, it's hard to imagine them any other time.
Yeah, they had to exist among
definitely not today.
Yeah, like today, no way, dude. Like, they needed MTV
for sure. And so we pan down to a shot of the Whiskey A Go Go in 1981. The camera pans toward I guess their apartment, which was like right down the block, where supposedly everyone on the weekends would just go and party after their shows. And we get to meet the band one by one. Tommy is immediately about to go down on this chick in front of everyone, while Nikki is lighting his arm on fire, trying to prove how punk he was. We're introduced to Vince as he's banging another guy's girlfriend in the bathroom. And then Mick was apparently like taking a nap, vampire style. I wasn't sure what was going on there.
Right.
So, that kind of sets the tone of
I love how right before they get to the Mick Mars laying like a vampire, and they're like, he's an alien.
just so casual about it. So we eventually move back into the living room where Tommy, I guess, makes this chick orgasm and squirt like in front of everyone.
Worked.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
sure.
Something to be proud of. Like I said, pretty much sets the tone for the movie. I love the quote, like, we weren't a band, we were a gang of fucking idiots.
Yeah, like the most honest. I think that might be the most honest quote of the whole movie.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Like, you gotta love the self-awareness.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I guess.
They literally were.
Yeah. They were complete sociopaths, but we'll get into that. So after the title card, we flash back to Seattle in 1967 to Nikki's childhood. Of course, then Frank Carlton Serafino Ferrano Jr., as that's his birth name. So young Frank is brushing his teeth when his stepfather just walks in and just starts beating him for not doing it right. So cut to a few years later in 1973, where you see Frank jamming at it in his room with the guitar he shoplifted, which I had heard that story that he had shoplifted a guitar because he didn't know the difference between a guitar and a bass. For some reason I thought that happened later in his life, but But yeah, in 1973, he's jamming out in his room. And he has a lot of like punk posters up, and like I don't know what he's listening to, but I feel like 1973 that would have predated a lot of the punk that he was shown as listening to.
The song he was
Because I mean, I guess then you would have had like Iggy and the Stooges, but like the Ramones
Yeah.
didn't really come out until like 74.
Yeah.
The song he was listening to is T-Rex, Solid Gold, Easy Action.
Okay,
So
well there you go.
that definitely would have been out.
Yeah. So
But yeah, so like I would say I wouldn't necessarily call it like the punk movement, like the inklings of that fire, really.
yeah, it was certainly early on, you know.
Well, in the Heroin Diaries, he said he grew up listening to a lot of like UK bands. Like he really loved like UK bands, and he was into the Stooges and the whole punk scene. So that's
Maybe like
kind
the
of
MC5, maybe.
Yeah, probably a lot of MC5, definitely the Clash.
Yeah.
The Clash, definitely.
Yeah, he was definitely into all, like, I mean, you can just tell from like, his style of playing, even his songwriting is heavily influenced by that era.
Yeah. No, he definitely brought that into the crew. But so at the time when he's in his room, he's rocking out, and meanwhile he has another fight with his mom, Dina, and the latest guy that she's with. And Dina is just a terrible mom. I mean, she's blaming her son for failed relationships as well as his father leaving. It's obvious that she has substance issues too.
Yeah.
And is just just a train wreck. So Frank is just trashing his room, and then he pulls a knife. And at first it looked like he was going to try and stab her, but then he starts like cutting his own arm. So I guess it's a clever way to get your mom arrested. If you're a kid, like. I mean, he's definitely committed to that. Like, he's obviously desperate to get. Didn't really expect that when I was watching it for the first time.
Yeah, so, that shocked me. And it was just like, I don't know. It's kind of like it's one of those things where you're just
a
like,
hell of a visual.
You don't know how you feel about. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. It was just like,
it's a young kid doing it.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see, but. Once the cops show up and let him know that he could go to he can go into like a juvenile home, like foster care, until he turns 18. He talks to his mom, and they agree to leave each other alone. She's just like, okay, we'll do whatever you want. So in 1978, we flash forward. He leaves. Frank leaves for Los Angeles and attempts to contact his father, Frank Sr., but his father, like, he gets the call and his dad wants nothing to do with him and completely denies him. So then he legally changes his name to Nicky Sixx in 1980. Pretty cool shot of him burning his old license. And I love the use of On With the Show in the background.
Yeah.
Like, that explains where that line, Frankie died just the other night.
Yeah, I always think about that scene in the movie, too, when I hear that line.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like didn't he go and like live with like his grandparents or something though?
Yeah, earlier in his child. That's what I'm saying. They didn't really dive too much into their personal lives, but he did grow back and forth with his grandparents, and he had a close relationship with his grandmother.
Yeah, or like he grew up with his grandparents, and they sent him to live with his mother because he was kind of getting into being like a rowdy kid.
Yeah, he was just too out of control. I could see that. So then we go to Covina, California in 1981, where we see a young Tommy Lee, or Thomas Lee Bass, of course, his birth name. So we see some glimpses of his family life, and it seems relatively normal. Like, he seems like...
What I find funny...
Huge contrast.
Before they get to Tommy Lee... Tommy's like, all right, enough with Nicky's bullshit, like his tragic life.
Yeah, I do like how often they break the fourth wall and kind of do this like meta commentary through it.
Yeah, and then you see Tommy Lee with this kind of like you said, a normal loving life, the complete opposite of Nicky.
Yeah, so I mean, I know Tommy Lee's with his parents. His father was a former U.S. Army sergeant, and his mom was, and I guess when he was stationed over in Greece, that's where he met his mom, who's from Athens. And Tommy himself was actually born in Athens, but they moved back to California when he was 2 years old. We also see Tommy's younger sister, Athena, who is also a musician in her own right. She plays drums, and she, I believe, was married to James Kotak, who used to be in the Scorpions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Random as hell.
Yeah, I know, random little fact, but I know Athena plays drums as well, and she's a musician, and I don't know who she's played with over the years or if she still plays, but I mean, I know her former husband used to play with the Scorpions, so
yeah,
make of that whatever you will. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you see a guy like Tommy who is that out of control, but he comes from this apparently loving family. I'm assuming like they seem like nice folks, Mr. and Mrs. Bass, but seems like they probably just let him do whatever the hell he wanted. Didn't seem like there was a lot of discipline in the film. That must be a California thing. I hear that a lot about like. I hear a lot from like the guys in Avenged tell the stories about like what Jimmy was up to. It's like, man, their parents just didn't give a fuck, did they?
Yeah, no way.
I thought the bit with Tommy wearing his sister's pants was a bit tacky, but
I like that bit.
It was a cute trailer moment,
As a pro wrestler, I like that bit because all right, when I was living with my best friend and my tag team partner, there were times where I usually when my tights rip, I like to wear tights under. So, you're not seeing my balls or my ass.
Yeah, just added protection. Yeah.
So there have been times where I'm like, oh, my shit's a rip, and I'll go to his wife, hey, do you have a pair of leggings that I can put under? Like, so
in a pinch, yeah. Hey, whatever gets you through, man. You gotta do what you gotta do. So. At the whiskey, we see Tommy and his girlfriend at the time. They're walking out after seeing the band London play, which was Nicky's band. Yeah. So after London had finished their set, and he said, according to Tommy, like he described, like I guess they had gotten into a fight on stage at the end of it. We don't see that on screen, but he's just kind of describing it.
Yeah.
So they later walk into a diner, which I think was a Denny's. I think it said Denny's on the front door. I wasn't sure. But it was like someplace like that, and immediately Tommy gets all like nervous. He starts like fanboying because Nicky's there.
Yeah. So, see that right there, like right off the bat, that I know that didn't happen.
Yeah, I was questioning that because they made Tommy seem like he was like, again, this little, like you said, this little kid,
Yeah, like they knew each other from the local music scene.
Right.
Like, and they were just like friends or whatever, and I know that they started like working together like right after Nicky left that band.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like that fanboy thing. He was just like, oh cool, you're that dude in this band. Like, I'm a drummer, and they were like, oh, we should totally work together. We like each other's vibe. Like, they tried to make it seem like, I don't know, more than it really was. Like it wasn't anything different than like, the dude you go to school with, then you end up jamming in the garage. Like it's the equivalent of that.
Yeah, they're trying to add a little dramatic license.
Was this, well experienced, artist, and that he happens to be here at Denny's, I'm marking out to him, Yeah. I didn't believe that when I seen that in the movie.
Yeah, so I know that was like, that's completely BS right off the bat.
Right. But in any event, Tommy is apparently starstruck seeing Nicky in public. So he approaches Nicky and he sits down, just totally blowing off the girl he's with, which is funny. London is apparently done, according to Nicky, but Nicky wants to start a new band, and Tommy he's all in. He's signs up right away. I love how the one waitress brings Nicky a little bottle of Jack Daniels as he requested.
Yeah, that's something you can do. And a Coke, and he just takes the Jack.
Like, sure.
I'll buy it.
Yeah, I don't think that was happening then. But
that scene right there, like that, I believe that's something Nicky would do. Like, let me get a Jack and Coke and just drink the Jack.
Sure. I feel like that waitress at that point doesn't care about getting fired. Like, yeah, I'll give you the booze.
Yeah.
Like, did they have that in the back of Denny's? Like,
yeah, and that right.
I don't think that was on the menu.
No, and like, and that's the other thing is I'm like, I don't know, like, even in the 80s, I'm like,
do they even serve alcohol at Denny's?
No, like no way.
Maybe she was just a big London fan. Who knows? So, but I gotta say, like Tommy, I think is really charming in these early scenes. Like
Yeah.
he kind of almost reminds
He
me of
comes
like
off as lovable.
yeah, like it's almost like Bill and Ted in terms of like his enthusiasm. Like
Like he's
yeah,
like your lead character in a stoner comedy. Like
right. Granted, it takes a much darker turn as the movie goes on, but at this point,
Yeah.
it's like yeah, it's like you like him.
he's the good boy.
Exactly. So one day, Tommy and Nikki are practicing Livewire with, I believe the name of the guitar player was Greg Leon. So I tried to look at in like their history, and I think there might have been one other guitar player they played with, but I'm pretty sure that this guy was supposed to be Greg Leon. From what I understand, I tried to do a little research. Greg Leon, he still continued to play throughout the 80s, even after. So I don't know how accurate this particular.
Yeah, I don't know how
depiction
accurate
was.
that is. I heard that it definitely didn't go down that way, and that he was
I hope not.
actually
I hope not for his sake.
working with them, like were recording and stuff. It wasn't like they were jamming. They were actually starting to record with him as the guitarist before Mars came along.
Yeah, who was actually like the original like singer and guitar player in the band?
Okay.
That's what I was just explaining. How he was already in the band. It didn't go down the way the movie played it out to be.
Which I was going to say, like, I hope not for his sake, because they, he didn't turn out that well for him in this scene. But as you see, Greg isn't really clicking with what Nikki's looking for. It just seems to be a styles clash in there, and Nikki and Tommy are visibly frustrated. One thing I pointed out here, Tommy is wearing like a Hulkamania t-shirt. That's a little anachronistic, and Chris, obviously you know this, but Hulk Hogan and this is supposed to be 1981. Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania wouldn't be popular until 1984.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of an anachronism there. Wrestling fans will understand it. So a little inside there, but it was cool to see. Outside the apartment, Mick Mars pulls up. And I guess Nikki had contacted him earlier from an ad in the newspaper. I don't know if Nikki put the ad in or if it was Mick's ad that Nikki responded to, but it was like loud, rude, aggressive guitar player.
Yeah, I think it was.
Nikki had put out an ad looking for a loud, rude, aggressive guitar player.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So it's funny, like Mick pulls up. He's instantly curmudgeonly and rude to them. Like he's kind of a dick already.
Oh yeah, I love when he goes. Oh, I was in. What was it? 16. Shitty name. Oh, it's a shitty band. You never heard us play. I can tell. It's a shitty name.
Yeah. So he's really warming up to them right away. So as Mick comes up into the apartment. He plugs in. He starts playing with them, and Greg is not vibing with them at all. He thinks Mick is too loud and. Which is like, okay, there's no way he actually said that. But that doesn't seem like something you hear in most band practices. At least I haven't run into that. But so Mick, Mick tells Greg right away, there's only room for one guitar player in this band, and it's me. And then like when Nikki and Tommy don't back him up, Greg is pissed off and angrily leaves. And I wrote down here, I'm like, I can't say I would blame Greg in this moment, but it. Obviously, if I was in that moment, I would feel pretty pissed too. But yeah. I mean, it's not, even though they made it obviously clear that he wasn't right for what they were going for. Then they get a little background on Mick. Mick is about 10 years older than them, and keeps being referred to as an old man.
Yeah.
Which
I resent right now in my age.
What I noticed about that scene when they were kicking out Greg Leon when they were kicking him out. How Nikki just like backed up and didn't say anything, kind of like I was like kind of pushed out there, like
oh yeah, total push move.
This is supposed to be your band, right? Like
You could at least let the guy down easy,
And then he let some new dude essentially take over the role. Like
I just got there that day, like.
Although according to Wikipedia, Greg Leon left Motley Crue before even meeting Mick Mars.
Yeah, so, that's what I was saying. He was already part of the band.
Yeah. So. Once again, I think it was just like we need to introduce some attitude with this character a little bit.
It's
like
dramatic. It's dramatic license. All these biopics have them. Nothing wrong with it. So we flash back to 10 years earlier when Mick Mars, formerly Robert Allen Deal, was being diagnosed with ankylosing ankylosing spondylitis.
Spondylitis.
Yeah, which is a form of like early onset arthritis, which kind of explains his nasty attitude at the time, because he's in chronic pain.
I forgot where I read it. It was like years ago that like he wasn't diagnosed with that till like a little later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was misdiagnosed earlier. Like they just said like he had scoliosis, and then like later. I mean, I could be wrong. It was something that I read like a while back. I don't even remember if I remember it properly, but I don't think it was a thing that like he knew he had the whole time.
No.
But I get that like there's like the ticking time bomb scenario for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I mean, and he kind of needed a way, like Jack said, to explain him being a mean bastard.
Right.
Like,
even though he's pushing 70 and doing all right. So.
Yeah, I mean, God bless him. He's still with us today.
Yeah.
But and I had seen Mick Mars in interviews. He never really seemed like a cranky guy. He always seemed like he was kind of pleasant, just a quiet dude. But
yeah, exactly.
They kind of played him as being just this like crusty veteran.
Yeah.
So.
Shitty band.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he was like that back in the day. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But Nicky and Tommy love this guy regardless. And they say they need a lead singer at this point, so Tommy gets an idea. So Tommy takes Nicky and Mick to this backyard house party where Tommy's old high school buddy Vince Neil is performing with Rock Candy, his cover band.
Yeah.
And they were saying like, yeah, he's so charismatic, they don't care if he can sing or not, which I think he can. I think Vince Neil's a great singer.
Yeah.
He was.
But I get what they were trying to say.
He can be when he's on when he's on his game.
Yeah, and I think actually like that part of the story, like with him, like how they got him, I think that's actually like relatively true.
That makes sense because I think they went to high school together.
Yeah, like they'd known each other.
Tommy
And like Mick Mars, like Mick Mars like really pushed for him because he was like, hey, he's pretty good.
Yeah. And the song that they have him cover, that they have Vince covering, "My Kind of Lover" by Billy Squier. After hearing that, I'm like, yo, I kind of would like to hear a Vince, like a Motley Crue cover of that. You know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I wonder who was recording the vocals in that scene, or if like they had somebody.
Oh, they probably had somebody like come in and just dub over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that was really Daniel Weber singing.
No way.
No.
Yeah.
But
they must have had someone who kind of sounds like Vince come in and do that part.
Unless they had Vince do it.
They could have. Yeah.
I dig how they said that though with Vince and how we don't care if he sings because they were just looking for somebody to get the girls in the door. That's it.
Which he did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tommy seemingly talks Vince into jamming with them, although Vince isn't really sure about it at the time. And later we see the scene as Vince and some random chick from the party they're doing coke and she goes down on him. You kind of get that's where that scene's going. So Vince wonders, like, maybe I should give those guys a call after all.
Yeah.
Totally unnecessary scene there, but okay,
completely.
Whatever.
But they got to keep that image going.
Yeah, that's really all the reason that.
And that is the first time you hear my favorite line in the movie. What the fuck do you think?
Yeah. It's like, all right, a simple yes or no would have been fine, Vince. I don't know.
That's gonna be my answer forever. Oh, aren't you that wrestler? What the fuck do you think?
That should be in every one of your promos from now on when you're in character. But yeah, so the next day, the Vince and that same girl, I think, she drives him there for some reason. Not sure why he doesn't have a license, but okay.
Sure.
They show up to Nicky's place for rehearsal, where they start jamming on live wire, and sort of despite the one girlfriend's initial objections for whatever reason. Again, this whole scene, it seems a little too contrived for that to have been how it really happened. I don't necessarily buy it.
Yeah.
Like I
but
don't think
I'll
that
allow
someone you're gonna bring your girlfriend to the your jam session, or especially you're just meeting the band, right?
Yeah, that's a rookie move.
She's gonna sit there and open up her mouth. Yeah. Okay.
But I'll allow it. It's fine. Dramatic license. So later, the four of them, they talk about what kind of show they want to put on. And Nicky wants a big, bombastic stadium show in a club. Tommy and Vince agree, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm thinking I was born in the wrong era, because that's the kind of rock show I want to put on with my band all the time. I just don't have any money. And there are fire codes now, so just ask Great White. I digress. But they start to pitch some band names right away. First, Nikki suggests Christmas, X with MASS, which I know that was a true story.
That was a true story. He did want to name the band X-Men.
Tommy suggests the Foreskins.
I like that.
FOUR.
Yeah.
Yeah. Classic goofy band name. You're always gonna get that whenever you're pitching a band name. Someone will make some fucking like when I was starting Vertebreaker, I remember when we were like pitching, like the bass player at the time, it was this kid who just, how about we call ourselves Just the Tip? Dude, we're not calling ourselves Just the Tip.
Right, like whoever thinks that's gonna work.
I'm like, shut up, get out of here.
Yeah.
It's good for a good laugh tonight, but
yeah, it's good for a laugh, but it's like, we're not gonna get on a radio with a name like Just the Tip. Like, give me a fucking break.
Yeah, never.
Or the Foreskins. So, I mean, Tommy might have been serious in that moment. Who knows? Knowing him. Then finally, Mick suggests Motley Crue. Nikki alters the spelling, and we're off to the races.
I wonder if, because the way
is a great
said
name.
It was like it was something he had been thinking about for a long time. I wonder if that's true. If that's like a name he was holding on to.
Well, like
that's kind of the way they played it in the scene.
Yeah. So allegedly, it was something that he had remembered. Saying like another group of like, I think it was like another band or something like that, referred to them as a motley looking crew, and he rolled with it.
I mean, honestly, it's one of the best band names like ever.
Yeah,
it is. It's definitely in like the top 10.
And then he puts the metal amulets on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alter the spelling a bit, and then off we go. So we cut to Motley getting ready backstage for their first show at the Starwood.
Yeah.
And sort of despite a rocky start, sort of hostile crowd, they launch into "Take Me to the Top," which is really underrated deeper cut from their first album. I like that song a lot. They literally get in a fight with members of the audience right away.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, honestly, there are times I wish that would have happened at gigs I've played. Like, like that would have made things so much more exciting. But I love after it gets broken up, the rest of the crowd starts loving it. Then they start like, all right, Motley Crue.
What I like about that scene, and this is what sticks out to me, is how they start fighting, it gets quiet, and then there's that one drunk guy that's like, Motley fucking Crue!
Yeah,
and everyone starts clapping.
Everyone else is like, all right, here we go.
I feel like that guy would be me. Like, it's quiet, and I'm like, yeah, fucking Motley Crue!
And everyone else is like, all right, we'll give these kids a shot. Let's see what they got.
The drunk guy likes them, all right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's Phil. We like Phil. If he thinks they're okay, they must be all right. So then we see a montage of them sort of gradually playing the clubs and sort of getting a fan base, and got to have a montage in movies like this. So after the crew finally works up their way to selling out the whiskey, I think it was like a couple nights in a row, we meet.
Which is funny because the whiskey only holds like, I think 500 people.
Yeah, it's a bar. Like it's
yeah, like so it's kind of funny that it's like that was like the epitome of like we're doing well.
But
I
guess
sell
what
out
they
the
were trying
whiskey.
to stress with the whiskey is that was such a iconic spot during the time, to like play at the whiskey.
I get it.
Zach, have you ever played the whiskey?
Yeah, but but it's really funny because like at the time, like everybody could book the whiskey. Like anybody could, and it was going to be a packed show because it was assumed that any band that had a show there was a good band.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of like the ECW arena, once that opened up to everybody.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I mean, well, hell, like, you just look at it for, was it in the late 90s, early 2000s? If it said WWF, it would sell out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it was that kind of place. Like, oh, there's a show at the Whiskey, well, we're going.
It was a destination.
It doesn't matter what star is there. It's going to be a good one. Not so much now, though.
I mean, legendary venue, of course.
Right.
Yeah, so we meet Tom Zutaut, played by Pete Davidson. He's a new A&R guy at Elektra Records. He's eager to get in. We then cut to Vince's girlfriend catching him just banging another chick in the bathroom. And she steals his pants.
I love those pants.
It was just weird how it was cut. At first I was like, wait a minute, all this is happening while the band is playing? Like, no, there's no way that Not
No.
like he left in the middle of a solo, had time to bang a chick in the bathroom.
Yeah, not in a million years.
I mean, unless he's got some incredible recoil that we don't know about, I don't think that ain't happening.
No.
Even when he's walking out in the crowd bare-assed, like that's.
It's good imagery. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what? That motherfuckers were rock stars.
Yeah.
But it's like all that happens while in the middle of the montage.
And what's funny, all this happens before they're even like really big, you know?
Yeah. Sure. So later on, Tom approaches the band at the Rainbow, where and when he sits down, he nearly gets blown by a random chick under the table. Seems about right. Sure.
That seems right. I would believe it. I mean,
I don't doubt it.
I've partied at the Rainbow a few times, so
I'll bet you have.
I'm actually.
I guess it's accurate.
Yeah, it's mildly accurate. I mean, I would assume that's probably close to accurate.
Yeah, sure.
I love how he just like backs off, like whoa, and she's like,
Yeah.
"One for you."
Right. I mean, if you're going in there and not expecting that would be a little bit jarring.
Yeah.
I think.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And I love how they go, I don't know if we could trust a guy that turns down a blowjob.
it's not something
And it
you
got me
expect at your
thinking,
typical
can I
business
trust a
meeting.
guy that turns down a blowjob?
I mean,
Maybe.
yeah. I mean, there's probably a good reason for that,
Well, like,
especially if
so
you
once
don't know
again-
who it's coming from.
Yeah. So once again, though, kind of a weird part in the scene relating to the actual history of it, like him coming along and being like, "Hey, I want to sign you to a record." Already had a record deal prior to that. They'd already put like before that happened.
Okay.
So like it wasn't like he was from a bigger label, so of course it was like exciting. But like at the end of the day, like they already had like a real manager. Like the business end was going. Like they're definitely painting a picture in this movie that it was like, oh, look at just these 4 out of control people who ended up big. Like, no, there was very much a business plan in play.
And they definitely made it seem like an overnight success type
Right.
thing, you know?
Which
Right.
it wasn't. It was a couple years.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, let's see. They formed in '81 though, right? And didn't Too Fast for Love come out that year?
Here, let me see.
Too Fast for Love came out.
Yeah, it came out in '81, self-produced, released on essentially Leather Records,
Right.
and they'd sold like 20,000 copies. But yeah, they were already like doing
Like,
well in LA. Like
it was essentially their demo.
I mean, yeah, it was an early release, and like a year later, the album was remixed and remastered.
Right.
And put
I
out
guess it's
through
what we would
Elektra.
consider today as like an independent release.
Exactly.
Right.
So that makes sense.
What it was, but like they were already like they were on their way up, doing well.
Yeah, they were making some moves. So like right off the bat, Tom offers them like a 5-album record deal there on the spot, and I wrote down, the good old days. So naturally, the band spends their cash advance on partying, and I guess apparently David Lee Roth is hanging out with them at this point. So back at the apartment, like David Lee Roth's just hanging out there, not really sure what's going on.
Well, they do have Mick Mars come in and say that it never happened. That was they just literally put that there for the movie.
Yeah, same thing with the scene about Doc McGee punching a guy out.
Yeah.
I love only for Mick to just break the fourth wall and say, this didn't happen.
None of this happened.
Yeah,
I do like a lot of the fourth wall breaks. That does make for very funny moments, I think.
There is that weird thing where I'm kind of like, if you're immediately going to acknowledge that something didn't happen, why
even put it in there?
Yeah, like
Just because why not?
Yeah, like I guess that's.
But I did like the scene with
choice.
David Lee Roth, how this mirror just knocks over and he's just like, what happened?
Yeah.
Because he's Dave.
Yeah, it's literally it's like they essentially had to like name drop for no reason.
Sure.
Oh, we know Diamond Dave.
Right,
Yeah.
like irrelevant to the story. Thanks for wasting 3 minutes on screen.
It's a total humble brag, But
Yeah.
So we see Doc and he explains that Doc and his partner Doug Thaler actually met them after a show at the Santa Monica Civic Center, but Mick explains that Doug will be left out of the movie, And again, I wrote kind of funny that they actually acknowledge this stuff. Doc mentions all the bands he represented. I believe he didn't represent Kiss until 1996 when they put the makeup back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't represent Kiss until later in their career.
But he did manage Bon Jovi.
Yes, and Skid Row.
And Skid Row, yeah.
And that would have been after this.
Yeah. Well, I think they that was supposed to be another like fourth wall moment where they're like, out of all the bands he managed, Motley Crue is by far like the most outrageous band.
Which is absolutely true, because I was on the first Kiss cruise and Doc McGee was there talking about it and just telling like how they would just torture people, like that it was insanity.
Right. So
not a fun time for Doc, I'm sure. But before the band plays their first show at the Forum in 1983, as they're backstage, Tom Zutaut is there. He wishes the band good luck and then looks for his girlfriend, who, unbeknownst to him, is fucking Vince right there in the dressing room before the show. Again, seems about right.
That is a true story, actually.
I totally believe it. Yeah. And and Tom even broke the fourth wall and said like he found out about it years later and it crushed him. So yeah, seems about right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So the band has a big huddle, and then they go out on stage and play "Shout at the Devil." And I gotta say, the whole like stage setup and outfits at the time just look incredibly badass. I know we were kind of clowning on them a little too much later, but like I freaking love the "Shout at the Devil" era look. Like, it's not overly glam. It's like black leather, and I'm like, fuck yeah, they look awesome.
Yeah, They definitely, like, they were one of the earlier, like, look at our stage show, look at our getup, like, they really had the total package, which, once again, goes back to this, like, they're really calculated and really smart dudes, so they're just continuing to build on, like, look at what we do, look at how we present ourselves.
Absolutely. It was, like, sort of the next evolution, because they were very inspired by Kiss, and it was just sort of the next evolution of that, and very, very much in that spirit. So there we see an MTV clip, sort of talks and addresses the controversy behind Shout the Devil. Then we cut to a Holiday Inn, where the band is staying as they're on tour with Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. It's funny, Mick, they had this whole like back and forth where Mick strangely doesn't seem to be that into banging random groupies, unlike the other three. And I thought like maybe he's more cautious, like due to his own health issues. I don't know, but like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Mick got his share of groupies back then.
Yeah, I noticed through the movie they made Mick the more, I guess, more down to earth, there, aware.
Yeah.
But I did read that Mick did dabble a little bit in what they were doing,
I'm sure he did.
But I that's one thing I don't like is like you portrayed the other three guys as these party maniacs, and they kind of toned it down like a lot for Mick. Like he didn't partake. You never seen him partake in anything in the movie.
Like, yeah. I know he was older than they were, but still, like
I think also because they were so involved, I'm willing to bet that there were certain things that they were like, let's just leave that out. Like we left it out.
Maybe so our kids don't have to see all this.
Yeah,
but they can know that I tried to lick Ozzy's piss.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's all been well documented.
See, it's funny that story, like they made it a point that like everybody's heard that story. I'm a little upset that they showed the story.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, we already know
they
it.
had to. They had to because, like you said, everyone knows that story. They're expecting it.
Yeah, like I don't know. I guess it's one of those things like you just want to kind of think about how it happens. Like you don't really want to know like how a hot dog's made. You just want to eat a hot dog.
I really wish they didn't depict it.
Yeah, I was like, did we have to? Like we've all heard the story.
Like who is this for?
In time, it's a legend. Yeah, exactly. What was the point? But I get it. Like they were like, well, that should be a scene because we've talked about it.
Yeah. Like let's just get this out of the way.
Right.
But I did like the actor that played Ozzy Osbourne. I think he played him pretty much to a T.
Yeah. Tony Cavallero.
Even though it was like a minute scene, 2 minute scene, for what it was, I think he was spot on. from the voice to the mannerisms.
No, 100%.
I mean, it's crazy to think that this guy was also on like the Nickelodeon School of Rock TV show, and then he does this crazy part as well. So I mean, certainly runs the gamut.
Yeah.
So what was I gonna say? So then we're introduced to Ozzy, who walks out there in a robe with nothing underneath as he just moons some random older couple.
And it's not a robe he's wearing. It's a woman's blouse, like a woman's dress, like.
Yeah. I mean, it's more than likely it's Sharon's. You just borrowed it. So he goes that. I wrote down like, I can already see where this scene is going. Weirdly enough, like Ozzy warns them like not to take their partying too far, which I that's such a weird like note to play. Like I find it hard to believe that Ozzy told them this. Like
I kind of see that happening.
How is Ozzy the voice of reason in this?
It's kind of like one of those things. Like I'll be honest, there's been times where I've been around people and I've done my things, and I'll sit there and I'll be, hey, listen, don't do this shit, and I'll just.
It's like do as I say, not as I do.
I was gonna say
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, and I could see him being like looking at them and being like, "Hey guys, I've been doing this a lot longer. I know what's up. Don't go down this path. Yeah. Like it sucks."
Let me show you how much it sucks.
Right.
Then of course he proceeds to, as this has been told famously, to snort a line of ants just to gross them out.
Yep.
He then pees on the ground and then laps up his own urine. Nikki tries to one-up him by peeing in the same spot, but Ozzy beats him to it by pushing him out of the way and licking that up once again.
Yeah.
Once
again, didn't really need a depiction of that, but...
No, but I mean, I'm sure there a lot of other stuff happened on that tour, them just trying to one-up each other. Again, I have no doubt that this really happened.
See, it's so funny, though, that, like, they were on tour with each other for a while, and that's literally, like, the only story that ever comes out.
Maybe that's the only story safe enough to tell.
Or maybe that's the only thing that was...
it's hard to make something like that up. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I mean, who knows?
I just think it's interesting that like they're like, oh, so how was the Aussie tour? And like everybody can just be like, oh, this happened, and I'm like, did it? Because that seems to be the only story that anybody has.
I mean, their recollection might be a bit suspect.
Yeah,
I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
So then we see the band filming the Looks That Kill video. With sort of a montage of them just trashing hotel rooms and generally being just complete psychopaths.
Yeah, like throwing a TV out a window.
Several, and just it's one of those things, man. As much as they play it for laughs, in hindsight, I can't imagine how crazy their shit must have been in real life, and just what a nightmare they must have been to deal with. It goes beyond just having a good time, and it's.
I may be a horrible person for this, but. I could see myself doing those same fucking antics. Like
I'm sure.
It's just, I don't know. It's that adrenaline rush, Like
I guess so.
Like when I seen that scene of them throwing a TV out the window, instantly in my head I started getting ideas of this character I want to come up with, and I've been begging my trainer to watch the movie, and finally he did, and he calls me up and goes. Yo, that scene where they throw a TV out the window? I go, yeah. He goes, that's got to be one of your promos. So I'm glad they put a lot of this stuff, whether it's true or not, in the movie, because it gave me a lot of ideas.
Yeah. So at some point we eventually see the band at a strip club where Vince meets what was his second wife. I guess he had been married before her, but he meets Charisse Rudell. She's a mud wrestler at the time. And then we get introduced to Razzle of Hanoi Rocks at the Rainbow. Later we see, I put this one down because we see Nikki do like a line of coke off this girl's ass. And I'm just laughing because it's like, I can imagine what it must have been like for those actors to film that scene. Because it's like you see, he like visibly like licks this girl's ass cheek.
Yeah.
That scene reminded me, I don't know if you've seen Wolf of Wall Street.
Yep.
The scene when he's in a limo and he sniffs coke. Why is it always like like that's like the image of being rich and famous.
It's a power move.
You get to
totally.
sniff coke off of a girl's ass.
It's just ego at that point. Like
once you do that, you hit that headliner status. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I'm laughing like if I'm one of the actors in the scene, it's like, do you mess that take up? Oh, I'm sorry, we got to do a few more of these.
We got to do a few more takes.
I mean, that's got to be such a mind fuck, like as an actor. I mean, obviously you're trying to be professional. You're just doing a job, but it's just like that's your job.
Imagine being cast for that. Like, yeah, your role here is you're gonna be naked and he's gonna sniff a line of coke off your ass.
I mean, there are girls who will do that to get in the movies, clearly. So
yeah, I mean, let it ride, I guess.
Yeah, it's
All right, so that's
thing.
on my bucket list. Sniff coke off of chick's ass.
I mean, yeah, even in your business, I'm sure it still happens from time to time. But
that's why, like I said, I was born in a wrong era, man.
Yeah, back in the day, I can only imagine. Yeah, Jimmy Snuka killed a girl. Anyway.
And Vince Neil killed the guy. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway. We're revealed that the girl in said scene is Roxy, Tommy's fiance. So as Nikki meets Tommy's parents backstage before show, Nikki is horrified to realize that the girl he was with happens to be Tommy's fiance. So Tommy's mom, Vula, she is sort of innocently says as she meets the fiance that she says, oh, I know this word. Is it groupie? And and it's innocently enough, like, his mom, like, she, again, English isn't her first language, so she's just trying to be nice. She doesn't understand that that's a derogatory term, and so it's this big misunderstanding, and so, but that pisses off Roxy. That really
I kind of seen that scene in another way. I kind of seen it as his mom knew what she was saying, and like kind of knew the type of girl that she was, like kind of like that mother's instinct. So she was kind of like trying to be a rude.
Yeah, I wasn't sure with it because like the way they played it, it almost seemed like it was just sort of a misunderstanding on her part. But I don't know, maybe it wasn't. But either way, it really offended Roxy. So later on the tour bus, Roxy is just laying into Tommy's mom and just calling her a cunt and this and that, and they argue. She stabs Tommy with a pen in the shoulder, and as she keeps berating him, Tommy loses it and just punches her right in the face.
Yeah.
Although he instantly regrets it and is like horrified at his actions. Unfortunately, as history shows, this would not be the last time.
Right.
Just ask Pam.
But it's funny that this is the only time that's depicted in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like the way they had Tommy's character, the way they had him portrayed, like. It was like he hit her and he was like, because they built him as such this nice guy, like he was like, oh my God, and he felt so bad, and it's kind of like, I've kind of been in a similar situation, like I've never like laid my hands on a female, but I like, I've almost gotten to that point and where I'm just like even, getting the anger built to that point is like, oh man, you feel bad. You're just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I about to do? So it's kind of like, I kind of think maybe that scene was could have been true,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't feel that sorry for Roxy in that moment, though.
No.
Saying. Not that I'm advocating it, but like I get it.
She kind of like, again, like I'm not advocating it like you, but she kind of brought it on herself. Like, you're disrespecting the man's mom. Like, you called her a cunt.
That ain't right. So we cut to Vince's house in Redondo Beach on December 8th, 1984. He's there with the band, and some of the guys from Hanoi Rocks and Tom and some of the other guys are there partying. It shows Charisse as being pregnant with Skylar, which I wrote in here, like, Charisse did not get married to Vince until 1987, and Skylar wasn't born until 1991.
Right.
So it's an anachronism there, but Vince and Razzle start to head out in Vince's car to pick up some more booze, while Tommy, I guess at this party, meets his future wife, Heather Locklear. I love how he comically mistakes her for Heather Thomas from The Fall Guy.
Yeah.
That was a fun little misunderstanding there.
I love her comeback, though. I love her comeback.
It's like, aren't you in Whitesnake? He's like, oh, rude.
Which is a great one.
Yeah. So that was pretty funny. As they're driving, Vince and Razzle are in the car. They're talking back and forth, and I'm not sure if Vince is supposed to be drunk at this point behind the wheel. I mean, we could just assume that he is, more than likely.
Among other things.
Yeah, but he swerves into a head-on collision, which kills Razzle, and then paralyzes at least one person in the other car, probably both people, I think. You had this really surreal scene where Vince hallucinates Razzle talking to him.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen, obviously, because Razzle was killed instantly.
Yeah.
From what I understand. And,
see, what I found crazy was that whole scene. I didn't know about that story until I watched the movie. So seeing that scene, you see these two guys having what I would consider a pretty normal conversation against, with two guys. It's like, oh, who would you rather fuck? And and
take it by surprise a little. Yeah.
That I was like, oh shit, that really happened. Like, oh man. And that's really kind of where I started looking up Hanoi Rocks and really listening to their music.
Yeah. I got to do a deep dive into Hanoi Rocks one of these days. I don't really know much about their stuff, but yeah, they've been around for a little while. So Vince is arrested and gets sentenced to 30 days for vehicular manslaughter. Only ends up serving 19, I think, because of some sort of plea bargain or something like that. I'm not sure what it was.
Money.
But, yeah, I mean.
And I think he agreed to go to rehab or stay sober or something like that.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, and money, of course, but
yeah.
So then we see this shot with Nikki as he's shooting up, and we see this great shot of just this gorgeous naked woman approaching Nikki. I mean, she looked amazing, and just serving him just a needle literally on a silver platter.
See that scene, it's
a hell of a visual.
Where he's the whole monologue where he's like, I couldn't be there for anybody because I was in love, and then you see that silhouette of the female, and you're like, oh, he got a wife, he got a girlfriend, and then it's the needle, and it's like, ooh, that's deep. That's a deep scene there.
Yeah.
It was like that song he wrote on the 6 a.m. album, The Girl with Golden Eyes.
Yeah.
Good tune, by the way. But yeah, then we see months later in the studio, Tom is talking to Doc and says that the label really need them to finish the record, which was Theater of Pain at that point, and get back on the road.
Is that the scene where Tommy's playing Home Sweet Home on the piano?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. You can see him kind of messing around on the piano and just kind of coming up with Home Sweet Home.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to see. As Vince walks in, he's newly sober and he's out of jail. Although he agrees to do a bump of what he thought was coke anyway. There's definitely some tension mounting at this point, especially when Vince finds out that he snorted smack.
Yeah, I think that was like a fucked up scene.
Yeah.
But again, it seems like something Nicky would have done at the time, just being just trying to joke around and being the prick that he was.
Mm-hmm.
He slips the guy fucking smack instead of coke.
Right. So Vince is pissed and he walks out. And later, as Nicky's strung out on heroin, he gets several voicemails from his mom, Dina, who he has no interest in seeing. And during this time, Nicky also he seems to grow a little bit more resentful of Tommy's relationship with Heather. And there also seems to be some tension between Vince and Charisse. And there's this funny beat in which Doc, gets a tattoo of Entertainment or Death, which is what they were going to call the album, only to find out that Nicky changed the name to Theater of Pain.
Yeah.
It's funny because I know later on they released a live album called Live Entertainment or Death. So yeah, I guess that's where that came from. But then later on a plane to Kansas City, Nicky agrees to be Tommy's best man. Although we're not at this point, we're not even sure if he's lucid enough to really even understand what Tommy's asking him.
Right.
So it's a little ambiguous at that point. Tommy then breaks the fourth wall to take us through a montage of a typical day for him on tour, and it's about as chaotic as you'd expect. Sleeping all day, drinking nonstop, being blacked out, cheating on Heather, the whole 9 yards.
All which probably happened.
Yeah, I mean, all that tracks, really. So it's
I love
that all checks out.
He goes, 8 p.m., we're on stage, and then this time I'm hyperventilating. And then,
yeah, and it's crazy. It's amazing that I'm amazed that he was able to function, let alone play every night. It's wild. I mean, the fact that they're all still alive is a miracle. But
right, which once again plays into how much of the story is true.
Yeah. So I wrote right here, I could do without the close-up of Nikki's ass at the end of the shot, but here we are.
Yeah.
But, sure. So Doc surprises Nikki by having his mother visit the hotel, and it's around Christmas time. Needless to say, it does not go well. Nikki gets pissed off. He fires Doc right there on the spot, doesn't even talk to his mom. And then we see just this montage of Nikki just shooting up. And like you mentioned, there's that cover of Livewire in the background. Kris, who did you say did that, recorded that?
Megan Kabir.
Megan Kabir?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. Is she like a big pop star right now? Or?
No.
Right.
She's an independent artist, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know if she was like super famous right now or what, but that's good to know. So later at we see we're at Tommy's wedding to Heather, and Nikki. This is in the back room. They're getting ready to go out. Nikki is too strung out and can barely function. Tommy's pissed off that Nikki would shoot up at his wedding. It's like, have you met this guy? Like, why are you surprised?
I remember specifically that in the Heroin Diaries, he talks about that and that day, and like that, and that was all true. That picture they took.
Yeah, you saw the photo.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to take in, because the way they build that scene up, and it's like, damn, he should be happy for his best friend. He can't even be happy for himself. He's shooting up. He's miserable, and you could clearly see it, and he thinks he's hiding it. So it's that addiction and how it really did have a hold on him.
Yeah. So then we go to another scene where Nikki meets his dealer, and it could have sworn that it looks like they got someone to look like Slash, who was there.
Yes, that was supposed to be Slash, and yeah.
Like I wasn't sure. Like, was Slash like a big heroin guy back then, or like? Because I know he drank a lot.
Yeah, he was a big heroin guy. That was what that's why Mr. Brownstone was constantly dedicated to him.
Yeah.
And we see the infamous scene of Nikki overdose and dying. Even the news like sort of reports it as an overdose, that he's dead, and he gets revived in the ambulance when an EMT gives him a shot of adrenaline right in the heart.
That scene where he overdoses, that dialogue before there, I have to say, I don't know whether that was actually a dialogue. Obviously, I don't think anyone would remember what they said. But that type of dialogue there, I would have to say that's like one of the realest like depictions of like being like fucked up after a night of being fucked up, and you're having these weirdest conversations. I've had similar conversations where you're just talking about the weirdest shit in the world, and he's like talking about the dealer's talking about how Walt Disney was a perv, and he liked to watch girls shit on a glass table, and he's like, you don't know shit about Walt Disney. And he's like,
that was a funny line.
I know that didn't happen because I'm a perv, and I've never thought of anything that fucked up. Like, to me, that was like one of the most realist like scenes.
It was a good dive into like actual junkie.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I just love the whole idea of him. It's like, man, you don't know shit about Walt Disney.
I actually, when I first started Motley Metal, it was originally called Motley Mondays because it was strictly a live show. And my intro, that was the ending of my intro. You don't know shit about Walt Disney. That's great. That scene.
I love the idea of like Motley Crue and their dealers arguing about like Disney movies. That would be such a great sketch.
Is Persia even a country?
Right. So later Nikki goes home and records that infamous voicemail greeting. It's like, hi, this is Nikki. I can't come to the phone right now because I'm dead. And then shoots up one last time.
Yeah. I love the ambulance scene when they're like, oh, we got to pronounce him dead. And EMT's like, fuck that. This is Nikki Six.
Funny. And then you hear the song You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory by Giant Thunders.
Yeah.
That was another one of those songs that GNR covered on the Spaghetti Incident. So thankfully, after this, Nikki and the rest of the band end up checking into the Betty Ford Clinic. And 1 year later, in 1989, they're sober and they're in the studio recording Dr. Feelgood. Specifically, Same Old Situation. While the album and the tour, they end up being a success, their family lives start to suffer from the busy schedule. Tensions start to arise between Vince and Nikki as the band struggles to stay sober. And when Vince gets home, he finds out that Charisse has left him and taken Skylar with her. So later on at rehearsals, Vince is no-showing and the band is pissed, and it just sort of devolves into this whole big blow-up. The band argues, and then Vince quits the band. So fast forward a couple years on MTV, we see Nikki, Tommy, Mick, and their new singer John Corabi give an interview about their self-titled 1994 record, which I personally think was a really underrated album. I really loved that record. I mean, it was really different than anything that they had done, but like I thought that was a cool album. And a couple years ago, I got the chance to open for John Corabi in an acoustic show, which was really cool.
Oh,
and
nice.
And he was a super cool dude, and he signed my album, and yeah, he played an acoustic set down here, and I got to open for him doing a few songs as well, and that was a really cool experience. Unfortunately, I mean, Corabi kind of gets short shrift in this movie a little bit, but it's just kind of a footnote, I guess, in the whole scheme of things. But
it's kind of funny how like they don't really play in, like they literally like act. Oh, they played shows where nobody showed up, or like right, but like that wasn't the case.
I mean, I'm sure attendance was down from what it was before, but
I mean, yeah,
it's
it
not
wasn't.
like they hit.
I'm sure they embellished it.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they definitely made it seem like everything came crashing down.
Yeah.
And they made it seem like it was all John Corabi. So, like.
Right, but like the reality was like the band was already like kind of doing worse prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is 1994, grunge hit and all that stuff, so it's like all that stuff was immediately uncool.
Yeah,
for
and like
a stretch there.
You know, they still had careers. Like it wasn't like, you know, everything was actually over. But like I think it's interesting that like they do this in the movie, like they split with Corabi, and then immediately it's like, okay, we got to get Vince back.
But see, like, I find it interesting.
It was so many. It was like almost 10 years later.
I find it interesting that it was during the time that they were getting sober is when they started breaking up.
Right.
You know, they were doing well, but that's when they started breaking up, when they were sober. It's just, you know, it's just mind-boggling to me how that, you know,
it's ironic, but you can kind of see it because it's like, you know, they have less distractions, so it's like they just start getting on each other's nerves, you know.
Right.
You know, which happens in bands. But yeah, so while this is going on, while the interview with John is going on with MTV, Vince is watching this in a bar, having completely fallen off the wagon. And at the time, Vince had a solo career as well. He did a couple solo records. He had one hit single, "You're Invited But Your Friend Can't Come."
Yeah,
that was off that movie Encino Man.
But like, yeah, like he was having a okay solo career.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, as okay as a guy like him could in the early 90s, you know, with grunge being out of fashion. But well, while this is going on, Vince gets a call from Charisse that Skylar is in the hospital. And he goes there to find out that Skylar has this cancerous tumor in her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And just, man, the scene where Vince has to explain to Skylar what's happening is just...
Oh, that broke my heart, man.
It's heartbreaking, man. Like, I've got 2 little girls now, and that really hit me really hard. Because, like, I couldn't even imagine what that has to be like. And, you know, props to Daniel Weber, who played Vince. Like, he was really doing a good job in that scene.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Motley's tour is not going all that well, and Tom shows up, offering to let them out of their deal with Elektra. And then Nikki sort of negotiates it's like, okay, if we can get our rights back, you don't need to pay us out or anything, but like, let us just own our masters or whatever. Yeah. And then you can release us from the contract.
Tom goes, the Beatles don't even own their master. And Nikki goes, well, they fucking should. I think that you know what?
Which is true. Like, that's smart.
I love that scene.
That's a smart move on his part.
All right, you owe us money, and fuck it. Give us what we want. And he's like, oh, that's impossible. The Beatles don't even own it. And it winds up happening. Like,
yeah.
What did they do, though? Because they made it seem like so quick. And I know it definitely didn't happen.
No, it wasn't. That was
did
probably
they just like do as much shit as they can to get kicked off the label?
No, so usually what happens, and like I can only speak to this from like personal experience. Like my first band, when we had a 2-album option for a third, and there was a moment in time when they talked about after we turned in our second record, or when we were working on it, there was like this fear of us getting shelved because we were basically making a record they didn't want. But it was kind of one of those things where it was cheaper for them to let us put out a record than to buy us out of our contract. Because if they had to buy us out of our contract, they had to pay us for that second record and to pay us for the option of the third.
Oh, okay.
So it basically would have been like Interscope either wants to spend $150,000 and put out our second record, or they can pay us out like $750,000.
Gotcha.
So in Motley Crue's case, because, and especially then when more money was thrown around for deals, I can imagine it was a thing where it was like, hey, they owe us 2 records, but like we're not going to get it with John Corabi here. You know, they probably had those crazy budgets where they were going to spend $1.52 million on each record, where it was cheaper to let them go. And, you know, at the time, you know, the band seamlessly being done and just, you know, negotiate a deal out for their masters. I'm sure, you know, Elektra probably still receives a royalty on everything anyway, because that's just how those deals go. But I imagine for them it was like, well, this will save us $5 million and we'll still make some sort of money off of this.
Right. I know the deal with Corabi, I mean, he did the 94 record with them. Yeah. I think there was also an EP, the Quaternary EP that came out. That was like another sort of like deep track release, like some outtakes or whatnot. And a lot of the songs that were on Generation Swine, which was the album, the first album they did with Vince back that came out in '97. A lot of that stuff I think was like some of it was like songs that they were working on with John at the time.
Right.
But as soon as they were able to get Vince back, they got Vince back.
Yeah. For that really, really short amount of time.
Yeah. So, we see another scene with Vince and Skylar, and it's so sad. And just meanwhile, Mick's condition continues to worsen. Also, Heather dumps Tommy after catching him in the tabloids out with a porn star. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming this is before he met Pam, obviously, but
yeah, I was wondering who they were talking. Were they like trying to say Pam without saying Pam? Was this before Pam?
So. I think they were trying to say Pam without saying Pam, because she was definitely in the picture in the late 90s.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't know if they got together after he split with Heather or before.
Yeah, I think it all crosses paths.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Because I know she was with Bret Michaels before she was with Tommy, so that was the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. Then, it was kind of interesting. While all that was going on, we actually see some like DJ equipment at Tommy's house, which was kind of like foreshadowing some of his later solo ventures.
Yeah, I think that's when he was doing like the new metal hip hop.
Yeah, Methods of Mayhem and some of the other like solo stuff. Like even to this day, he's always been into like EDM and electronica and stuff like that. And so that was kind of a cool little foreshadowing thing. Later, Nikki meets Tom at the Rainbow, and Tom lets Nikki know that Elektra's finally dropped him, but it agreed to release the rights back to the band. And Tom, just kind of says like, man, I liked it better when Vince was with you guys. And unfortunately, like while this is going on is when Skylar passes away in the hospital, surrounded by family. It's just really, really sad stuff. I know that actually happened, and I don't know how old Skylar was when she passed away, but I know that it was a big deal, and I know like he set up a memorial foundation in her name. I think that they still do charity events for that.
Yeah,
I believe there was some inconsistencies with the timeline there.
It was, because she wasn't born until 91.
Exactly.
Later on, Nikki visits the grave of his father and meets his half-brother for the first time, who, weirdly enough, his brother ends up, was a fan of Motley Crue and had no idea that his brother was Nikki Sixx.
I like the line where his brother goes, I lost my virginity to Home Sweet Home.
Yeah. And it's pretty wild. Like they seem to get along well enough in that scene, and I put down I wonder if they kept in touch after that.
From what I read in the Heroin Diaries, they I'm not gonna say they have a close relationship, but it's definitely not the relationship. It's definitely not like a distant relationship, No,
I mean I'm sure they're friendly at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it's also he didn't found out about him, and
until they were already adults. Yeah. So I was curious about that. So later, Nikki visits Tommy at his house and apologizes for what happened to his wedding, for how he was behaving at his wedding years ago. And I wrote down, it's kind of cool to see them in their 90s look at that point.
Yeah.
So Nikki and Tommy later pick up Mick from the hospital after his hip replacement surgery. The three of them are determined to get Vince back. So they meet Vince at the bar that he was at earlier.
Happens to be the same bar he's been at for 3 seasons.
You know, same bartender and everything. I guess he's a regular there. So Nikki apologized.
It's funny that they're kind of portraying it like this because the point that they're trying to portray was what happened before the reunion in like 2004.
Well, actually, it was earlier than that. It was in 96, 97.
Well, when Nikki Sixx came back, but like the whole like story of like the like Mick Mars and the hip replacement and all that stuff.
Oh, that was later.
That was much later.
Okay, so yeah, that's a little anachronistic there. But I know they got back together, you know, in the mid 90s after they start talking to him. Vince, Nikki apologizes to Vince, and they all sort of offer their condolences about Skylar's loss, and just I thought it was a nice scene, like of them like reconciling and just kind of saying, it's like, look, I'm not trying to go.
Band,
this isn't about money or like even if you don't want to be in the band, I just want to apologize to you because I miss my friend, you know, and it was nice to see that. So we end on this scene of them backstage, and it was either at because I know that their big comeback appearance was at the American Music Awards, or it might have been.
I believe they were actually doing that from their farewell tours, where they were portraying that scene.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's what it was supposed to be, because it would have been like maybe on the Generation Swine tour. It looks like that's kind of how they were dressed at that point. Because I mean, at that point in '97, Tommy still had like all the tattoos and stuff that he didn't have before, which was a funny little like thing. Because I mean, Machine Gun Kelly, he has plenty of tattoos, but he had to cover up a lot of them when he was playing Tommy, especially like young Tommy. So that was like a whole thing he had to go through. But like even at that point in the late '90s look, like they looked badass in those outfits. Like they could look like that now.
When they're walking towards the stage, not actual Motley Crue, but you know the final scene of that of the movie there. Mm-hmm. I think that's such a like that badass where Nikki just turns around and you know he's like this is our fucking life. Like and I love that. That was a perfect scene to end it.
Yeah, so I mean, we ended with like a montage of like real band footage, you know, combined with what was in the movie, and it was great. Like,
I love the little candid interviews too.
Yeah,
it's so weird that they end it like there, essentially with like the '97 reunion kind of thing.
Yeah,
because,
and they still had 20 more years to go.
Yeah, well, like they skip like the whole period where like Tommy left the band and they put out another
Randy
record.
Castillo.
Yeah, and then what's her name from Hole who was playing for him?
Samantha Maloney.
Yeah, like she went to play for him. Like, you know, it's even funny like just to think like, okay, the 04 reunion happened, but like they were still active until 2001. Like it wasn't even
the new tattoo tour.
Yeah, it wasn't even like a crazy long period that like they were off. It was like, oh cool, we got Tommy back essentially.
Yeah.
Like it hadn't been that long. Like it's such a weird way that they paint that picture of like the band. And like they don't like I get that they kind of closed out on a high point, but like they missed a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I think the movie was like under 2 hours.
I think it was like an hour and a half long.
Yeah, which I'm thinking like
the movie felt like I was talking to Jack before we started recording. Like the movie felt like very rushed, and I was saying how it reminded me kind of like the Tupac biopic, how everything just seemed so. All right, next scene. Yeah. 10 years later, and it like whoa, like
and like I get that they're trying to like tell like you know put a ton of story into the movie, but it was like I feel like you missed some key moments. Yeah. I mean, hell, like they skipped over like Tommy Lee going to jail. Like, you know what I mean? Like they skipped over like a lot of like Mick Mars's actual story, like with
Mick Mars just seemed like a minor character, you know?
Yeah, like you know, it was really kind of like the pseudo like Nikki Sixx story.
I was just more or less that it was the Nikki Sixx story.
But I mean, I dug the movie. I like the montage at the end of it, and just like even the scene of like the shot of them like in full gear, like walking across the Sunset Strip. I'm like, man, this band just had a swagger about them. Like they looked the part. They wrote great songs and all this stuff. I mean, they lived the life, but that's not really what made them great. I think it's it's what they did when they were on stage and in the studio. But yeah, like I thought it was a cool, like as biopics go, I thought this was pretty well done. Like you said, it could have been longer, and you would think being on Netflix, they could afford to go as long as they want, but
Yeah, I
without
think
the theatrical release. But
I think the part that
whatever.
like really missed the mark with it was just having such an inexperienced director for the movie. I think
That makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
that's what hurt it. Like, this was literally the only movie Jeff Tremaine, like real movie that Jeff Tremaine
Yeah, the only
ever directed.
non-Jackass or Knoxville project.
Right, where I'm like, yo, he wasn't the guy for it.
Yeah.
Like,
That's fair.
I get that they tried for so many years, but like, I think that's where just like it always missed. Cool, you read the cliff notes of The Dirt and went, I can make scenes out of this. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's really interesting, like that whole direction they took with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how well this would have played had it been in the theaters necessarily, but who knows?
Well, I think that's where Netflix got away with the casting, is because it was on
Yeah.
Netflix. They didn't have to go with the big
Like
budget
big names.
actors.
Yeah,
Imagine who they would pick, and whether it would have been portrayed as good. If you had a big Hollywood actor playing Vince Neil, who would they go and get? Chris Hemsworth? Come on.
right. Like, yeah, man, who knows? But I thought the guys who they had did a really good job. Douglas Booth was Nikki Sixx. He's it's funny. Like Machine Gun Kelly's the only American actor to play one of the four leads.
Right.
Yeah.
To play,
I love that scene.
Band who's not American.
Yeah.
I love that scene and during the credits when they have MGK going into the trailer.
And then the real Tommy
Lee,
comes
Tommy
back.
Lee comes out.
That was cute. That was adorable. But yeah, so they had Douglas Booth play Nicky. Let's see, I'm trying to think what he did. He's done a lot of like BBC stuff, like a lot of like TV in England. Not really seeing like too many other like big projects that he's had that I would know. I guess he was in Jupiter Ascending as well. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. That's hilarious. And I think he did like a Romeo and Juliet film and a couple other stuff. Let's see. We had Colson Baker, MGK, but I mean he's been in a couple other movies. Like he was in The King of Staten Island with Pete Davidson, just as like a cameo.
Right.
I think he's done a couple other acting projects, but I mean I thought he was great in this. Like I thought he did a good job. I mean
I think it was honestly like a perfect role for him, because I see him as somebody that kind of idolized Tommy Lee. So I think for him, this was like definitely like a mark out moment for him. Like I get to play a guy I looked up to.
You think so? I mean, is he you think he's a big Motley Crue fan?
I would think so. I maybe not Motley Crue in general, but definitely Tommy Lee.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm sure they're friends, in real life or whatever. But I mean, I've read that like he's a big fan of rock music from that era.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess.
Well, that's the thing. He's one of those. And this is like I said, I didn't start listening to his music until after seeing The Dirt. He does incorporate a lot of rock and with the hip hop, so I could definitely see him like. That's why I see him playing Tommy Lee. So
yeah, he's kind of following that like Kid Rock trajectory, where it's like he started off as a rapper, but then like slowly wants to transition and do other stuff, and plays guitar now, and so it's like he's kind of going for that vibe. That makes sense. And then Daniel Weber, like I said, I mainly knew him from The Punisher. He played this one character in that, but he's done some other stuff in Australia as well. But yeah, Pete Davidson, we talked about him as Tom Zutaut. He's another one of those guys. But David Costabile played Doc McGee, and he's been on a couple shows like Billions, Breaking Bad, Damages, Flight of the Conchords. All right, so he's got quite a few credits. Levin Rambing as Charisse. Like I knew I've seen her on other stuff before. I think she was in the Hunger Games.
Okay.
And she was on the Terminator, Sarah Connor Chronicles. She was on that show. A couple other things. Yeah, Tony Cavallero we mentioned was Ozzy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, who's the girl who they got to play Heather Locklear? She looked a lot like her. Rebecca Graff. Yeah, I don't.
Max Milner played Razzle.
Okay.
And then Christian, I can't seem to find anything on this person, but Christian Gehring played David Lee Roth.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know anything about Christian Gehring, but yeah, not a lot of big names in the movie, obviously, but it's
they blew all their money in development for it, for sure.
Pretty much. pretty much. Like, it took a while for them to get this thing made, as I mentioned.
I'm sure acquiring the rights alone was a pretty penny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, Pete Davidson and Machine Gun Kelly are probably the biggest names in the movie.
100%.
Which is why it's only on Netflix.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, and that's fine. Like, honestly, I don't need a lot of like big names in biopics. I'd rather just kind of just immerse myself and be like, okay, you're this person.
This movie was one of those things where it was, like I said, I didn't know any of the actors going into the movie. I seen, Motley Crue. I'm clicking.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one thing, I don't think this movie gets released or has an easier time getting released without Bohemian Rhapsody being a huge success. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
I think the big thing with The Dirt was it wasn't necessarily made for Motley Crue fans, but it was made for people to become Motley Crue fans via a movie on Netflix. Like, sure. I think your average Motley Crue fan is like, oh, this was entertaining, but like it wasn't stories you didn't know. It wasn't anything like that. I think it was really just like, hey guys, there's this band who's still around. Check out who they are, and now you might go buy the records and buy a ticket to the show.
Well, that's exactly what it did in my case. Like I said, I knew of Motley Crue. I didn't know too much, and after seeing this, I became legit a Marcus super fan to where anything Motley Crue, I'm looking at it. And not only that, it was the reason they were doing the tour that they were planning before the pandemic hit. Was because of this movie had generated so much interest into Motley Crue that they decided to do another tour.
Yeah. And even like during the production of this movie, they were technically like broken up, but like they were still working together and still recording stuff in the studio. And I think it was one of those things that farewell tour that they were doing. They were just so sick of being on the road all the time. But then like they got together and like, okay, we don't actually hate each other. We just needed a break. You know?
Or they realized that they could make so much money.
Yeah. That too. I was trying not to be too cynical about it, but I mean that is also true.
Yeah.
Like why even do that to yourself? But you know, it is what it is. I enjoyed the movie. Like it's a fun watch. Like, I mean, I know, Chris, you've seen it a ton of times.
Yeah, it's honestly my go-to movie. Like whenever I'm sitting there and I'm feeling like I have a lack of creativity or a lack of inspiration, legit, I'll just throw that movie on and it'll be like, okay, now I'm in this mood to do something. Now I'm in this mood to create, and do something larger than life,
For sure. Yeah. Zakk, overall, I mean, dig the movie? Yes, no?
I mean, I enjoyed watching it the first time I watched it, I was like, okay. Like, a few weeks later, I watched it again, and I think I've watched it maybe like 2 more times just to be like, all right, let me see. And each time I'm like, it's entertaining. Like, I put it on the same. It's not the best comparison, but I'll put it on the same comparison as like a movie like Dude, Where's My Car? Where like if it's on, I'll watch it. I'm not actively seeking it out. It's fun for what it is.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely put it up there as far as that goes. Is it the best biopic of all time? No, of course not. But
far from it.
Well, it's like Zakk said. It really, I don't think this was made for the Motley Crue fan. It's made to create a Motley Crue fan, which is what I also seen in the Tupac biopic, because I'm a huge Tupac fan. I'm one of those kids that knows everything about Tupac. So when I seen the Tupac biopic, for me, it was like, I know all this stuff. I know, like, I've heard all this stuff. I've seen all that. Like, what am I going to learn from this? So I kind of see that's how you took from this movie. It's like, all right, I pretty much knew all this shit already.
Right.
Same thing for Bohemian Rhapsody, and I would love to do a deep dive on that one of these days. Even though I did a review back when it came out, that would be fun to do. Just because I'm a huge Queen fan as well. So it's you never know. But guys, this has been awesome. Thanks for doing this with me. And I know you both always have stuff going on. Even during the pandemic, I know everyone's kind of trying to hold everything together. Kris, with you being in Pennsylvania, Zakk, with you being in Nashville, me being in Orlando. We're all trying to. This podcast, I know for me, has really been keeping me sane, because I've been doing movie reviews and now album reviews and stuff like that, and just other discussions, and I'd like to do more of them. So if you're listening, feel free to leave a comment and hear what you'd like to hear me and my friends talk about, whatever it is. Kris Rex, where can they find you on the social medias and Motley Metal and all that?
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Rex Wrestles. I'm also on Instagram at Rex Wrestles. Pretty much any social media platform at Rex Wrestles. For Motley Metal, we're on Facebook.com/Motley Metal and on Twitter at Motley_Metal. You can listen to us every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern at Spreaker.com/show/Motley Metal. And also it airs at 8 p.m., which is 5 p.m. Pacific. It airs on soundmachine.fm.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll definitely have this available once it's edited. We'll be sharing with the fans of Motley Metal as well. Do a little co-branding.
Yeah, I'll definitely be throwing this up either as an episode of Motley Metal or a bonus episode. I did put it over on this last episode I recorded, so
I appreciate that.
Of course, man, of course, and I definitely want to do more of this stuff with you guys. I was actually
sure, and you were nice enough to have me on your show before, and
yeah, we're just gonna trade it back and forth. That's it. We're just gonna
I love it. Just keep it going.
I was actually playing on the playlist that I had set a few of the Transformers from the original soundtrack, the Transformers songs.
Nice.
So I then
You've got the touch.
I would love to do that's the song I closed out with.
You've got the power.
I was thinking about doing a deep dive with the original Transformers movie.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think that's an iconic movie there.
Yeah, that'd be wild. So Zakk, what have you got going on right now? I know when we last spoke, you'd kind of gotten off the road with Falling in Reverse. I don't know if you're involved with them anymore or what. I mean, well, no one's on the road right now, obviously, but it's but where can the folks find you on social media? I don't know if. Do you want to be found on social media?
No. Yeah, honestly, like I've been staying off of social media for the most part of this pandemic, just because I think there's way more important things in the world going on than me posting another, Flashback Friday or another photo of my dog.
Right.
Anybody who has like my phone number essentially or like normal contact is on my Facebook page, and that's where that'll stay. But yeah, I'm keeping the attention off me. I'm still working in music business management, working on music at home. Someday I'll rejoin the world, but the world has to be ready for people to rejoin it first.
Right on, man. Yeah, I know when we last talked, you were working on, maybe a solo project as well, doing some singer-songwriter stuff.
Yeah, and, there's like a whole record written and demoed.
Nice. I know you had a couple irons in the fire, so
yeah.
That's good to know. Well, this is cool, man. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. You can always follow me on Twitter at jackxconnor. Same thing on Instagram at jackxconnor. You can check out my band Facebook.com/vertebrakerband, Twitter at vertebrakerfl as in Florida. We tried to get it, just on the Twitter handle, but on Instagram just Vertebraker. And I also play bass for another band called Mature Musical Pictures at maturemusicalpictures.com. I'll leave all my links here in the description. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. For Kris Rex, for Zakk Sandler, I'm Jack Connor saying that even though I'm 37, I'm still too young to fall in love. I'll see you later. I'm not 37 yet.